you have it, you're looking at your laptop and the score, or you're looking at your iPad and the score is right there.
Oh, that'd be great.
And you have your stylus and you can make notes.
Yeah, you can annotate it with a pencil,
Aha.
highlight it, and whatever else, and you don't have to carry music anywhere.
What type of iPad do you have? Do you have a current iPad or older iPad?
I have a new one, but
okay, the new ones actually come with the tools that you want, and all you have to do is go and open it up as a PDF file and use the editing tools.
And
it doesn't require software.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Who said they were using it already? I
am right here. Right here. It doesn't require, unless you're going to write music or add something to it, I wouldn't spend the money on the app. All you have to do is go and open it in PDF and just use the editing tools. All the stuff that you care about's there.
Except
because I've been using that. How easy is it to navigate, Deborah?
I don't know. I'll let you know tonight because I was playing with it. It seemed pretty easy. For what I care about, which is basically highlighting, making notes, and scribbling on it, I haven't had any problems. It's very easy to save afterwards. I save mine to the cloud, so it's very easy to pull down from any of my devices.
Okay, all right, yeah. So maybe
don't spend the money.
Okay, maybe I'll. Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here comes Faye.
Oh, hi, Bill. I see you.
Hi, Linda.
I see your name is up there someplace.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, it looks like it snowed behind you.
Any other tenors? Where are the tenors?
I'm here, Liz.
Oh, good.
I'm here.
Hi, Jane.
Nancy's here.
Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
Hello, Nancy.
Oh. Hi, Dana.
Janet's here.
Good. Hello.
Hi. Tenors in the house.
Tenors.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Lisbeth.
It's 7 o'clock, so we should get started.
Okay.
I've been puttering around the house, but it's been fun to hear the updates and conversations beforehand. So those of you that are just joining in now know that you can join in before rehearsals and chat with people, just like we do afterwards, as well as during breaks too. But welcome everybody. This is the second rehearsal of our exploration of Foyer Requiem, and of course everything to do with French lyricism and French music and whatnot. While we just give a couple of minutes for people to sign in, I haven't been mentioning it, but I have a series called Musical Points about movement and ballet. And this Saturday at noon, I'm especially excited about it because the person that's coming in, Hermano Florio, is the conductor at Houston Ballet, but it was also the conductor at Het National, which is Dutch National Ballet. And he is taken apart Romeo and Juliet, the ballet, into all of its themes and how Prokofiev develops the character and the story through the music directly. And even though this is a talk about ballet, there's actually going to be very few ballet clips because we're talking about the music and how music tells the story. So I'm going to post the registration if you're interested here. It's really going to be fascinating. And then we have a dancer, Sofiane Silv, who is was principal dancer at New York City Ballet, San Francisco Ballet, Het National, which again is Dutch National, and now is in Dresden. And so it's going to be a fascinating talk. And so again, it's free. You just have the registration.
It's been really good.
I don't think we can do recordings because we have to release the rights for them. We have to get the rights for them, but it should be fun. So I want to talk about...
The Merced concert was very interesting also.
Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful ones. The Nutcracker one, which is in 2 weeks, is even more fascinating because we're talking about all the influences in Nutcracker, including all the French folk songs that are in Nutcracker. If you didn't know, there actually were a bunch. So that should be a lot of fun. I might need to get some water in a little bit. But I wanted to talk, I think it was an interesting little shock that we had at the end of last rehearsal, singing through the Four Requiem all together, because we suddenly found out that the real tempo, not the rehearsal tempo that we've been using, but the real tempo that we've been using, that we're in the recording, which is more akin to what's written in the score, the tempo is incredibly slow. And there's a difference between what we do in rehearsal and to, work on musical phrasings and whatnot to build up to a slow tempo. But I want to talk about it because in reality, I'm going to share my screen. Hold on a second. Make sure I'm at the right one. Okay. And so I'm going to share my screen and show you really, if you want to take out the first movement, the first movement is notated as molto largo, very, very slow, at 40 beats per minute, more than a second per beat, right? And so if I were to play the beginning, oh, wait, actually, let me do the share so you can hear the sounds from this. I remember I have to do this always. Share computer sound. There, okay. So. Right? It's so incredibly slow. And the hard part is, how do we make music from that? How do we, it feels like you're just waiting for every single beat. Oh my goodness, every single note is longer and longer and longer. How am I going to possibly breathe? How am I going to possibly phrase or whatnot? And the reality is that when you think of the notes as just one beat per beat, one sort of check-in per beat, it is very, very slow, very slow. And so the exercise that we did last week in terms of singing not no, 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 but singing no, 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 singing eighth notes, or even no, 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 16th notes to fill out those beats. It dissipates a perception that you're just singing one note and holding it, rather than you're constantly refreshing the pitch and blossoming the note throughout. So for instance, if I did 80 beats per, we're still on the share. If I did 80 beats per minute, which is every eighth note, you'll immediately see that it's actually easier. You can see immediately that it feels like the music actually moves a little bit more, even though that's exactly the same exact tempo. And if we did the really ludicrous practice, Google does this funny thing where it changes color from blue up until red for super fast. So I guess we're in the yellow warning speed zone right here. But this would be the tempo of 16th notes. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so what we say often is that these are subdivisions, how we divide each beat to make sure it doesn't feel like just single notes with this indeterminate length between, we're just struggling for breath, that we're struggling for the next note to actually happen. So I want to just do quickly, before we start our rehearsal, the difference between how we divide these things. When we talk about subdivisions, we say there's either simple or compound. That means how we divide the beat. And so you can see on this that this is just a simple staff, right? And each time signature has a certain meter, like this is 2/4, 2 beats per measure, right? But these beats can be divided. We can subdivide them. So for instance, if we divided them into 2, ta, ta, or ta, 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 that's called a simple subdivision. It can be divided into 2 beats. Now, 2 subdivisions for each beat. Now, this can be done in many things, right? So for instance, 2/2, 2 half notes for the bar, or 2/8, 2 eighth notes for the bar. We can subdivide them in 2 in simple compound meter. By half notes, half of the beat would be quarter note. Or an eighth note, half of those beats would be 16th notes. So if you divide a eighth note into 2, you get 2 16th notes. If you divide a half note into 2, you get 2 quarter notes. So instead of just singing a half note and thinking, I'm going to sustain this and hold this for a really long time, you have to understand that there's constantly a rhythm underneath. There's a rhythm from the orchestra. There's a rhythm from, like when violins play, they're actually counting subdivisions and playing vibrato, sometimes timed with the subdivisions. And so, for instance, if you have 3 chord notes per bar, that's a triple, but you can subdivide them again into 2, eighth notes per each one, right? Same thing for 3/2, 3 half notes in a bar, 3 eighth notes in a bar. You can divide them into 2, each note into 2 subdivisions. And then so when you have 4/4, like we have here, we can think about them as eighth notes, and that's what I really think of. Nu, re, qui, me, te. Minimum. You want to feel that subdivision. Not only going to help us stay together, but it's also going to maintain the line and breath that we have, the support that we need to sustain the note. So the same thing, you could have 4 half notes to a bar, 4 half notes, 4/2, 4 eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, subdivide them into half chord notes, 16th notes, and it's straightforward. Now, of course, yeah, we can ignore this one. So triple, so compound meter, you divide them into 3. And you see, we can have, as opposed to 3/4, where you divide them into 2. So here on the right are simple meter, which is a simple subdivision of eighth notes, versus compound, which is up to 3. So if we took the Requiem Aeternam and we divide into 3, one triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, right? You divide each of those chord notes into 3. And so do you see this? This is a dotted chord note, 3 eighth notes together. It's compound meter. But regardless, the subdivision is really important, whether you're in compound meter or simple meter, because it's not just the notes, it's the rhythm underneath it that gives the music life. I think I told everybody this anecdote before, but this is the beginning of the year. There's a piece called Siegfried Idel by Wagner. And the first violins just go, and they hold that note for a really long time. And this conductor was saying to them, no, I don't feel the pulse. I don't feel the pulse in the note that you play. And for most people, that might sound ludicrous. What is the pulse when it's a single note? We played the single note. How can there be a pulse? But the way you blossom, the way you vibrato, the way you phrase that single note, a violin is like a voice. Da, da, right? The way you build, the way you phrase that single note, it gives away how the musicians were thinking about the subdivisions under that note. So when we have a very slow tempo, what I do here is often play faster, because for me at the very beginning, the phrasing is the most important thing. The phrasing is not just ta, 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 right? That's just a dying thing, but it's really tam pa tim pam pa requiem aeternam. Michael Tilson Thomas always says there are 2 ways to do dynamics. One is the way the audience realizes it. Oh, there must be a crescendo there. The other one is the natural musicality that the music calls for. And they feel it, but they're not aware of it. There's no crescendo in this first line. But the way the words are phrased, the way the music is naturally going to go, it's requiem aeternam, rest eternal, requiem aeternam. So we would actually put a little crescendo there. But if we started off with a tempo, originally that's, there's no way we would have that idea of phrasing in our ears. And so when we start bringing it back to, that's why we say rehearsal tempo versus the actual performance tempo. Like when we do something that's music that's really, really fast, our rehearsal tempo would probably be slower than the actual tempo that we're going to perform it, because we have to work our way up to it. This is exactly the opposite. It's so slow that we're going to start off faster and then work our way down to the original tempo. The second phrase on the lower part of the first page, right? The music naturally goes to the F major, Domine. Dona eis Domine. Grant us, Lord. Dona eis Domine. But again, if we just practice this, right? It would be impossible to have that idea of phrasing, especially with the piano, which, as you know, is a percussive instrument, and every note will decay. The piano cannot sustain a long note, but voices can. So we don't want to imitate the piano. We want to do what voices do, which is be able to sustain the long phrase. So we're going to get started with a warm-up first, but then we're going to go start working on the first movement, the introit and Kyrie, and hopefully go through the entire movement today. But our goal is simply to, sorry, hold on a second. Let me just, what did I just do? Remove pen, I want to highlight. So, okay, what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we sing these notes, that they aren't single notes that we hear, but that they are single goalposts that have a lot of subdivisions in between. And so that's why we start those rehearsals and rehearsal technique that says no, 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 no. So we can start building in this phrasing, and that the notes aren't just single things with nothing in between, but there's a lot of connective fibers in between that sustain and build that phrase. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Julia, and she's going to lead us through a warm-up, and then we will get started on the first movement.
Okay, hello everybody, happy Monday. Let's stand for a good warm-up. So make sure, as always, that you, oops, let me adjust my camera. Make sure, as always, that you have your balance underneath your feet underneath you. They are underneath your hips so that you are equally balanced. You don't have like your feet like super far apart or too close together, but you want to feel balanced and relaxed. And make sure that your knees are unlocked as well. If you lock them, then you stop blood circulation, which is never good. So make sure they're nice and bouncy, relaxed. And let's go ahead and reach up to the sky or the ceiling, I suppose, because we're all inside. And let's bend over one way. Focusing on a nice stretch on your side. And whenever we do stretches, focus on your breathing. So focus on how deep you're breathing. Just kind of relax your body, release tension, focus on how your body is doing today. Let's lean over to the other side now. Take a nice deep breath in and release it. And then let's come back to center and let's go ahead and kind of twist back and forth. And then bring your arms down into the cactus position. So your elbows should be approximately like parallel to the floor, and we are leaning back just a tiny bit, not enough that you feel like you're gonna fall over, but just enough so that gravity will take over for you and pull your arms, it pulls your shoulder blades together, stretches your collarbone, stretches your chest, just stretches everything out so that you're not hunching over, but just stretching all of this out. And then bring your arms down and relax your head to one side and pull that opposite shoulder down. actively. So you have a nice, good stretch in your neck. Don't forget to take nice, deep breaths. And exhale. And roll your head over to the other side. Same thing, actively pulling down your opposite shoulder to get a nice, good stretch. And then bring your head back up to center, roll your shoulders back. And then forward. And now let's do a tiny bit of a face stretch because I don't know about you, but mask wearing has been getting to my singing. The reason why we stretch, by the way, before we do singing or warm-ups is because so much of singing has to do with your body being your instrument. And when you are tense or just, you know, if you're tense and all your muscles are just tight and you have bad posture, then your instrument is not going to function as well, right? If you have a violin but you don't have the right hold, it's not going to make the right sound. So if you relax tension, make sure you have nice, good posture, then it makes it easier to create nice sound. So with the face stretch, let's stick our tongue out as far as possible. Try to touch the bottom of your chin. It's okay to make noises. And now try to touch your nose. And now just kind of go back and forth a couple times. I love seeing this on gallery view. Yes. Okay. And now let's do a big lion face. So make your face as big as possible, opening up your mouth and your eyes and your eyebrows. Everything is just super big. And then as small as possible. So scrunching up your eyes and your eyebrows and your nose and your mouth. Everything, every little muscle. And then stretching out one more time. As big as possible, lion face. And then now bring your hands together like this. Relax your jaw completely and move your hands back and forth, and it'll just kind of like, it'll do this. It'll just kind of relax your jaw. So that's just a nice little, it's the same kind of thing that we do with this. It's a nice little jiggle for your face. Great, okay. So now I'm gonna sit down at my piano, but stay standing for a nice good posture. And let's start with lip trills with singing. Great. Okay, I skipped over my breathing exercises, so we're going to jump back into breathing. But lip trills are great because that's a way to actually get your breath connected to your voice to make sure you have enough breath through your phrases. So now go ahead and put a hand on your belly and one on right underneath your ribs, like we kind of normally do, to make sure that you are monitoring the expansion and the connection to your breath. And we'll breathe in for 4 beats and then out for 4 beats, just to make sure we're expanding. Like Ming talks about, imagine when you take in a breath, you have a sack of potatoes and your breath are the potatoes, and you drop it on the ground and it just goes everywhere, every direction, down, out, across every axis. So here we go. Nice deep breaths, in for 4, out for 4. Ready? In and out. And in and out. Last one, in and out. Great. And now we'll breathe in for 1 beat and hiss out for 4 beats, and then for 8 beats, and then 12 beats. So adding 4 beats each time. Taking a breath in between and then also releasing after each one. So ready, and breathe. Release. Now 8. Release. 12. Release. 16. Great. And now let's pulse for 20, making sure not to speed up, but a nice consistent beat. So we'll go for 20 beats. Ready and breathe. Great, excellent. Okay, now we'll get back to singing again. So once again, make sure, just check in with yourself, make sure your posture is nice and aligned and tall, and we will sing our NG in the back, so closing your tongue and your soft palate together. It's okay to either have your mouth closed or open, it doesn't really matter as long as you have that NG in the back. Nice and soft, not forced. Focusing on placement. Ready and breathe. Last one. Okay, and now we will jump back down here and sing saw. So using the S to get connected to your breath and then opening up to an ah. Careful not to drop your placement into the back of your mouth. So we don't want so. We want instead that forward placement that we got with that saw. Nice and forward. Using the S to get you started. So nice long S. Don't, we don't want to, but saw to get you started. Okay, ready and go. Saw, 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 saw. Last one. Great, and still stay connected all the way through. Now, this one comes in handy for all these dynamic changes that we have. So, singing on an umlaut, and the focus is to be soft but controlled. And soft singing does not mean less intensity or less breath. It means the same engagement, same connection, just maybe a different emotion to it. So even though we're trying to sing softly for this, careful not to punch the high note. So we don't want, see if you can connect it, but still keep that intensity. And and sing all the way through the end of the phrase into that last note too. Okay, ready and breathe. Don't shy away from the top note. Just pausing for a moment. As we get higher, use kind of a sweep to get you up into the high note and create that space that you need for the high note on the bottom note so that there's not much of a, so that you don't have to do as much work to get you up there. So let's do that same thing and then we'll go up a couple more times. Ready and breathe. Last one. Great. I saw some of us doing this too, which is great. It's always really great to do kinesthetic or like to move because it helps you connect what you're singing to what you're feeling, to what you want to be feeling and what to be expressing. So it's really great to always move your body as you sing. Okay, one last warm up. A new kind of scale. I mean, it's a scale, but we'll go. So stop for it. We'll spend a little bit more time on the low octave, a little bit more time on the high octave. Then when you come back down, you sing an arpeggio. Okay, just a little extended scale, just something new. Okay, ready and sing. We're gonna pause for one moment. I see some of our mouths like this. You need to drop your jaw because you need to relax your jaw. You need to create space for that high note that you're about to sing too. So make sure when you take a nice deep breath in, relax your jaw to create that space. Okay, same space, same spot. Here we go, ready, and last one. All right, great. Then we'll pass it back to Ming to start rehearsal.
Right. So everybody, thank you, Julia. That was wonderful. So we're going to start with the first movement, and I want to sing through it a little bit. Again, I'm new a little bit, but I want to, again, feel the sort of, we're going to do the rehearsal tempo, so slightly faster. But I want you to really feel sort of that connection and that sustain of your support throughout. Okay? So again, I'm going to count off while I play. Hopefully it comes through clearly. But let's start from the beginning. Now remember, from the first note, this entire chord of your first note comes along. So when you hear this D, you have to sing a D minor triad. Da, 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 to find out where your note is. Da basses, baritones, tenor twos, tenor ones, altos, sopranos. So you really try to make sure that you can hear your first pitch from the first note that is played. So you hear the minor triad. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Ready? 1, 2, 3 on new. 4. 4, 1. And 1. Now again, because we're going to continue on, but because we are all virtual, we should all sing the solos. So this is a tenor section solo. Let's all sing with this, and the same thing for the soprano solo, section solo later on. Everybody singing. Here we go again. If I remember correctly, the Robert Shaw version actually has quite a long ritardando at the end. So write that in. We usually write in wavy lines at the last few liaison. Now, working backwards just to, because it sticks out a little bit. If you go to page 11, the last, you have 3 liaisons at the end. The first one is F, E natural, liaison. And then the next one, the second to last one, is liaison, right? E flat. Make sure you circle that. And then, of course, the very end. doing French, so it's going to be Z, et les hommes. Okay, let's go back to the beginning.
Can you always give measure numbers, Ming?
I don't have measure numbers, but yeah, we'll try to do that. Okay, so at the very beginning, bar 1. How about that? We'll start at bar 1. We're going to start, and I want you to think in your head, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But this time what I want to do is we're going to sing on the text, but I want you to repeat the note. Re, re, qui, e, te, na, nam, dum. Okay, and we're going to continue that for the entire beginning. Now, just as a reminder, we start off pianissimo. Basses, I said, start off piano. And you have sostenuto, pianissimo. Then as you continue, sempre pianissimo, still quiet. But then at rehearsal A, you have a crescendo from piano or piano to pianissimo or piano to forte in 1 bar. And then you have sempre forte. And then again, over the course of basically 1 bar or 3 beats, you have a diminuendo down to piano. Then you get to rehearsal B, you have pianissimo, and then pianissimo. So in general, this dynamic is very, very soft, except for this one big swell. But for now, let's read it. We're going to sing it on text, but repeating each syllable for every 8th note. Re, re, qui, me, te, na, nam. 1 and 2 and do, na, e, do, mi. Sorry, mi, ne. Okay, let's try that. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 qui te na 1 and 2 and do na e do ne. Now crescendo molto. Okay, so this time I want you to mentally think that heavy in your head, but sing normally. Re, qui, me, te, nam. And really have that subdivision underneath you. I'm actually going to play the 8th notes, but I just want you to sing sustain. Okay? Now remember, you don't want to sing like Julie did in the warm-up. Requiem. Tilt your head slightly forward to really get a nice bright sound. Think about throwing into your cheeks. Requiem. Not requiem. Just really keep nice and focused and forward. Okay? From the beginning. With what are those notes? You're going to keep those 8 notes in your head. Sing the music on the page, and I'm going to play the 8th notes to really get it in our system. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. One. A couple notes. In French music, often they tie to an extra eighth note. Now, in general, we're going to be cutting off on the beats. And so for rehearsal B, 2 bars before rehearsal B, as in bravo, where it says luce a, you're going to put the T, luce a, t, on the beat, not the half beat. So that happens that the bar before that, the 3rd bar before B, cut off on the downbeat, not an extra eighth note longer. Even though the tempo is quite slow and we could sustain a eighth note quite easily, we want to make sure that we're clean and together. We're just going to do it in the French style, cutting off on the downbeat. Okay. The other thing that I will say, 3 bars before rehearsal B. That dynamic where the diminuendo starts, the first note or the beginning of the first note is still forte. So put in a forte there, then diminuendo. So it's not that we get softer. Diminuendo means start from the dynamic that you are at and then get softer. So make sure that you keep it clean and strong. So between A and B, rehearsals A and B, we crescendo up to forte, then we come back down to piano. Okay? This time I'm going to play and just count, but I'm going to play the orchestra music. I'm going to bring down the tempo a little bit slower to what I think will be the Robbie Shaw version, where we sing at the end of rehearsal today. But I want you to really think constantly about those subdivisions. The music is going to be portrayed and sung like it just hangs, and it's beautiful, and it echoes around the hall. But in order to do that as performers, you know that we're working really hard to sustain, to think the subdivision, and to maintain that energy that creates the impression that it floats. But if we think about just creating music that floats, it's going to be off the breath, it's going to be a little bit airy and whatnot. We want to, again, do the technical things that we need to make sure the music has life and it floats. But to do that, we're really energizing our support. We are thinking the subdivisions, refreshing the vowels, and again, thinking the very, very long phrases. From the beginning, and again, I'm going to play the orchestra part as written. You're going to sing the music as written, but I'm going to count off because I'm not conducting and you can't see the beats. I'm going to speak the subdivisions from the very beginning, and then we're going to continue on. So get ready to move on. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 2 this note, 2 and 1 and 2 sustain and 3 and off and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and off and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and forte. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and sustain. gran pausa. Continuing on with the text, but even though it goes faster, the dangers go Requiem aeternam. I want you to think horizontally. Requiem aeternam. I don't want you to think like there's jumps in the pitches. I just want you to think it's one solid long line. Da 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 da. Requiem aeternam. Really sustained. Okay, from the beginning. Breathe. Okay, let's go back. The same thing as always for this music. This music sometimes has longer lines than it is possible for a person to actually sing through, except if you're like, you know, a superstar, like huge capacity, air capacity or whatnot. So take breaths when you need to. There are certain ones that we would do all the time anyway, as in Andante moderato, where we are, the tenor entrance, after the first two bars. Requiem aeternam, dona eis domine. Breath. Et lux perpetua lucea Deis. If you need to take a breath in that second phrase, that long at rehearsal C, those 4 bars, feel free to take a breath wherever you need to. That's really hard to sing through, especially because we're going from crescendoing from piano to forte in 1 bar again, and opening up to quite a long sound. Okay? Let's start that from the beginning. I want you to sing this only on the vowels. Well, I threw in an M there, but you can see if you can do it without any consonant. Too often, we use consonants to divide the pitches. It becomes this thing that cuts off the sound, especially ones that are unvoiced, like T's or F's or S's, right? We're not vocalizing anymore. We're just doing this consonant. So when we sing with only vowels, it helps us maintain the idea of long phrasing. There's no we don't have those little breaks. So let's try this. It's really funny, but it's really difficult to do sometimes. But we're starting again from the tenor line, Andante moderato, and it's going to be only vowels for this entire section. Tenor line only, right? Everybody sing. Here we go. I don't know about you, but I slipped up and I added 2 or 3 consonants. So, you know, if you admit it, just raise your hand. You know, it's actually really hard to do that. Okay. Now, the next thing that we do is we're going to do that again, but I want to see if we can get to crescendo. Let's start off a little bit softer. I would say as a solo section, it's just like if you had a solo by yourself, you wouldn't actually sing it at the dynamics that's there. As we always talk about, we want to give the impression of a dynamic and do technically what's going to create that impression, whatever the dynamic we actually sing is. And for a solo section above the orchestra, we don't have to be too soft. So I would immediately mark it up to mezzo piano, start off relatively strong, but then when we crescendo, it needs to be really to a good forte. And the problem at rehearsal C is not the first bar of crescendo, it's the sustaining of the forte for 2 full bars after that. Et perpetua luceatis. And then you can decrescendo as we lose our breath. So let's start. Again, because it's a fun exercise to do without consonants. And then we're going to sustain the lines, but this time add the crescendo. Start off mezzo forte, mezzo piano when you enter, and then crescendo molto the forte. See if you can sustain it, even if you take multiple breaths, and then go down and decrescendo. Okay, here we go. Only vowels. Oh, crescendo. Now, again, oftentimes it really is hard to sustain the forte. What you want to do is really think about not sort of petering out, but again, maintaining that. And if you have to take a breath, that's fine, but then come back. So you don't want to like sort of die out each time, but you want to sustain the forte, sustain the dynamic. And that means, again, like there's a boat with a little bit of a hole in it. You want to make sure that you're constantly working to maintain the dynamic and the pitch. Now, let's try this again last time. But what we're going to do is we're going to add the consonants. But we don't want to lose any of that idea of continuity, of long line, of silky singing. And even if the dynamics are that big, like barely audible, even if they're the tiniest thing, the more important part is to maintain the line. Consonants are going to come later, that's fine. But we want to really focus on including the consonants, but not interrupting the flow of the music. Entire tenor line, then we're going to try the soprano line after that. All right. Let's go on to the soprano line. Everybody. Oh, sorry. Let's continue on. Here we go. Great. Now, this music is not D minor. But it's in B flat major. It's lighter. It's sweeter. Can you write over, well, no. Can you circle what Fourier wrote, which is exactly what we want to do, is we want to focus on the dolce aspect of it. Dolce meaning sweet. When we think about it in music, as a musical term, of course it is sweet, but the contrast of dolce is often espressivo. Espressivo is expressive, overflowing, whereas dolce is light, tender, and sweet. And so for this section, with a different key, with a brighter feeling of lightness to it. I want to maintain an actual piano and then change our tone. So when we nu, the, u, zin, zi, or. You want to maintain the sweetness to it that still has all the technical support that we need for the long line, all the horizontal singing for the legato, legatissimo singing. The only thing we change is the dynamic a little bit and the tone a little bit. Let's try this entire soprano line because it's only a few lines long before the chorus comes in proper again. Let's start from rehearsal E. Rehearsal E is an egmont, which is it's a great Beethoven overture. Okay, let's start. Here we go. Now, do you see where we ended up? The music, even though there's no crescendo there, starts moving back into the dark D minor. So we would have sorry. And so when the chorus comes back, when everybody comes back in, not just the soprano singing, we have exaudi, right? It's a cry that comes out. It's F major, but it doesn't sound like it's a happy note. It doesn't sound, it's, it has somehow an unsettled feeling to it. When we sing fortissimo, the danger is that we put an accent on it. Exaudi, exaudi. And this one, we want it to be full and rich, but we don't want there to be an accent on it. And so I would put there, and this is for technical reasons, not for tone, but we normally say, sing it warmly. And if you sing it warmly, it's hard to think of warm with an accent on it. Accents are sharp, accents are dynamic, pointed. Warm is sort of diffuse. It has a richness and fullness to it. So for technical reasons, even though the music is really crying out, we want to avoid an accent. Write in warm or no accent or whatever you want. Let's break this down. Basses, tenor twos, tenor ones, altos, difficult note, that's a transition note for you, and F for sopranos. Now, what we want to do in rehearsal is when we sing soft, we use the word do. When we sing loud, we sing da. We want to think about open vowel. Da, 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 do, 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 da, 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 do. And what we're going to do is switch between das and dos, really to show off how drastic the dynamic contrast is. You start fortissimo, then you go to piano. You go to fortissimo, you go to piano. You see all those dynamic changes? So to really get that in our ears and our brains, sing da when we have forte for this next section while we're learning the notes, and then do on the piano sections when we're also learning the notes. Okay, let's start. So, basses, tenor twos, tenor ones, altos, sopranos. Da, 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 do, 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 da, 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 do, do. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da, 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 do, do. And 1. Da, 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 do, do. Now, do you see that? When we continue the phrase, let's start again from rehearsal F. F for fortissimo, right? So there's 3 Fs there. F, rehearsal F, and fortissimo. We go da, 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 do, 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 da, 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 do, do. But then the next page, or the continuing on, ad te, we have fortissimo, but it does not go down to pianissimo or piano there. It's sustaining fortissimo for 4 full bars. And then what did we say about diminuendo? Diminuendo means that we start from that dynamic and then we start diminuendoing. So even on omnis caro, sorry, the second one, this is at rehearsal. Does that say F again? Oh no, my first one was actually rehearsal E for Egmont, but it got cut off in the other one. So at rehearsal F, where we have the diminuendo written, you should write in sempre fortissimo first and then diminuendo. So we know that that first note at omnis. Then we get softer. It's a big drastic change from fortissimo to pianissimo. Two-letter dynamic fortissimo, 2-letter dynamic pianissimo. Let's look at these notes a little bit because it's a little funny. These are some chords that we don't normally hear in classical music. Like we said last week, you know, for ear training, it's the augmented chord. And so we start from, and then tenors go to, I've been playing that wrong a little bit, but then we go back to F major. And then tenors, instead of going to its D, we go to C sharp. Right? And that's that augmented chord. And that throws the next chord all over the place. We go, tenors stay the same, but then the sopranos, altos go to F sharp and C sharp. The tenor one's going to F sharp. And then this next chord is another augmented chord. And so the alto line, it's basically an F natural or an E sharp as written here. Tenor one's obviously same thing. If it wasn't, it would be A major, but it's got that. You hear that? That's a Star Wars chord. You know, ba-dum, 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 ba-ba-ba-ba. But it's a. So that's an augmented chord. And then when we change the tenors, remember that the C sharp is the same as a B flat. D flat. So it's the same note. Omnis So when you have the C sharp to D flat to C sharp to D flat, it's the same note. So let's sing this slowly, still on da, do, da, do. Yeah, so Christian, the F, I think it just got cut off in the copy. And so we're gonna, if you look at the piano part or the orchestra reduction, that's actually gonna be the better part to look at for rehearsal letters. So we're gonna look at a rehearsal E for exaudi. And for those of you that are using the IMSLP, this is on page 6. Again, da 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 do 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 da 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 do. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1. And 1. 2, 3. Basses. You have a long jump. Rehearsal F. Omnis caro. Return the page. Now, in normal music theory, this chord would end like this on that chord, but you'd have. But what he does is he changed this chord to, again, that clash. It's a very, very subtle way to make a small change that's very, very effective in our ears. Can we start after rehearsal E, where the exaudi was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. 5 bars after rehearsal E, where the words are a te, and it is fortissimo sempre. It is F sharp minor chord, altos, E sharp is the same as F natural, so you don't change pitch there. It's just the chord flipped a little bit, and so your function in the chord is different, but it's the same exact pitch. Beautiful chord progression. Beautiful chord progression. Yes, yes, we will go by measure numbers in the future. We just have to make sure that we agree on how the measure numbers are done, because sometimes they're done by piece, sometimes they're done by movement. But okay, so bar 54. This is the 5th bar of rehearsal E. Right? On da 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 do do. See if you can crescendo, fortissimo, and then decrescendo them on it. Okay? Right? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Good. Let's close off by singing to the very end. Even though we haven't done some of the notes, we're going to finish off this movement next week and move on to the next movement after that. But again, first 3 rehearsals for this right now. And we're going to continue on at rehearsal G for gnocchi. Okay? G for gnocchi. Unison, everybody. That's fine. Starting from rehearsal J for Jacob. J for Jacob. J for Jacob. Again, this basis. Right? But the chords on top of that are really beautiful. And then this chord. The normal chord progression that we had from before. Okay? Now, J. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice tenor line, nice tenor line, nice tenor line. And then finally, before we go into a little bit of a break, let's start at H. H for Havarti. Now, everything on this is really wonderful. It's a D minor chord. So sopranos. One. Nice tritone. But the altos underneath that. And then you use unison. And then down to F sharp. basses, I'm going to skip the tenors for now. Basses. Nice high whole step there. And then you have A's forever. And then tenors. At rehearsal H, which is bar 67, you're going to come in 2 beats later. And then half step down. Half step up. Half step down. Half step up. Got a nice, beautiful lyrical line there. What I would do is I would sing along with the basses on bar 67, bar H. Sure Magician Ming's J. So, you know, in some music, this is a weird fun fact. In some music, I's and J's are cut out of the counting because they used to be the same letter. And so they skip one of them. And so we'll go by measure numbers in the future and stuff. I'll make sure that I have the measure numbers there because I think it's a little confusing when people have different editions and everything. But for now, hopefully you know where we are. We're on bar 67. 67. So let's do, sorry, what I was saying is the tenor line. Sing with the basses because that'll give you the first note of your line. You just go up. Okay, H. Here we go. H. Let's just sing it on text to the end and then take a break. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1. E natural. And 1. E flat. All the sustain. Here we go. And 1. Remember, we're going to slow down quite a bit at the end because that's what the recording does. This one. Okay, so we ran through the entirety of the first movement. Hopefully we had majority of you for most of it. But it's a beautiful movement that, again, has sort of this combination going between D minor to B flat major, right? Which it changes the color. But the signifying thing, that's really the two things to really focus on, is the sustain of the long lines and then the contrast of the dynamics. Really sustaining the long lines with the subdivisions underneath and keeping through that energy and support, and then these drastic changes in dynamic, okay? So we're gonna take a break for, I think, 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna come back. Julia's gonna do a little bit of the Sanctus again, and then we'll end with some sectionals going into our, again, singing through the first movement with the recording. So let's take a break right now. Feel free to unmute yourself and chat. I'm going to get some more water, and I'm going to take myself off a speaker view. Okay, we'll see you in a little bit. No worries. Hey, yeah, no worries.
Hi there.
You don't even know who's talking.
And there was talk of having some sectional. Anyone talked about that? Having some socially distanced sectionals in the church or something?
Sorry, what did you say about socially distant?
Yeah, there's been some talk of having some socially distanced sectionals where we could spread out in a church and sing live. Is there
The
any?
problem with that, with singing, is you have to,
Yeah. Right.
with singing, you have to be farther than 6 feet because you're.
Yeah, but in a church, that wouldn't be hard with a sectional.
Yeah,
You had 12 people, you could spread out easily.
very, yeah.
You don't know who's been in the, I don't know.
Right.
the Building.
I would not do it, that's for
I
sure.
would not do it either.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either.
That's
We don't know that
Part of
6
the
feet
church, I
is
would
singing
make
was a
sure
good
it's just
one,
on
though.
principle.
6
Well, that
feet,
would
we
be
don't know
smaller
what's safe
too.
for singing. 6 feet isn't safe enough, far enough for singing. We
No.
absolutely can't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
that was,
I mean, I'm
No.
from Kansas, so.
I might do it outside.
Well, there's an idea.
we could.
I just saw a men's group this afternoon that was singing outside by the North Gray Church, all socially distanced.
Yeah.
Mask.
How far apart were they stand?
At least 6 feet, and then they also had mouth guards. I don't know what it's like to do it that way, but I tried.
Been doing studies. Needs to be 35 feet.
Yeah. 35.
And were they wearing masks, Stan?
You wouldn't even hear each other at 35 feet.
You know how you can do it? You can do it in Russian
In Russian.
because you've had the vaccine.
Ah,
Well, thanks for the humor. We need that.
I saw a French chorus, children's chorus. They were singing with masks. I don't know if you saw that photograph.
No, but there's an idea.
France is just having a big uptick right now.
Is that
Yeah.
right? Well, maybe that's why.
Please come up with a mask that you can sing through, but not let the germs through.
Well, to continue in the humorous vein, they were probably raccoons. Masks.
How about a Zoom sectional?
Yes,
We altos have had a few of those over the,
We Sopranos have one scheduled for this Thursday night
so
for the Steal Away.
Yeah. Tenors also.
altos also. The
Too
four-
complicated. I'm not doing that. Too much work, and I'm not doing it. Yeah, online singing, just, I don't know, doesn't work for me, but, oh, well.
Well, it's not ideal for sure, but it beats doing nothing.
Absolutely.
I agree. Yep.
Certainly not my first choice, but
So
I
which
rather.
one? It's the little one.
Yeah, but to
That's
try to do that recorded,
loudest,
anyway,
that's-
it's just too complex.
That's just, if you're listening to something, you just want to get rid of it, you press one button. Device.
Are we talking about getting rid of? Are we getting rid of something?
If you're unmuted, don't forget, all of us can hear whatever you're saying.
Well, I think I'm unmuted, but I don't-
Sing.
Is
hello,
anyone-
Colin. Hello, Wendell.
I just want to say I'm from Kansas doing these, so.
Hey, nice.
Really?
Welcome.
All right.
I
Hi,
understand
how
you're
are you?
related to a chorus member. Is that correct?
Me, yes. Becky Rice is my sister.
Ah,
Nice.
Oh, glad to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wow.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But it's going pretty fast. I sing in a rock and roll band, so it's been a while since I've been in a choir.
well, this is French rock and roll.
So,
So
man, tell me about it.
You cannot even say this is the rock and roll of the time. So
What band?
an old rock and roll band, and we have a lot of fun. But I haven't read sheet music for a while, so especially this fast and in Latin. So I need some special work on my own. That's for sure. Some way. Listening
What's
listening
the
to
name of your band?
Pardon?
What's the name of your band? Roll band.
Harvest Moon.
Ah, very Kansas.
Yeah, we do a lot of, Neil Young and Tom Petty and Elvis and all that kind of stuff. So that's why we call our swim.
Go to the website and
We
use it
usually
as
have
a
one piece of paper. No,
use it as a resource. That'll help you a lot.
Who sings in, which one of you sings in the rock and roll band?
me.
And
Ah,
So I usually have everything's on 2 pages. The whole song, everything's on 2 pages, like A chord, D chord, C chord. I sang in choirs a lot for a lot of years in church and in university, but it's just been he's going faster than I thought maybe he might go.
Play an instrument.
So we'll have to work on it.
I think it's harder when we don't have other singers around us to help
Oh,
us.
absolutely. That's why I was wishing that he could have like a group of singers right next to him by the piano that we could hear them, or because I'm still thinking, how do you pronounce this word, and
We all are.
or C flat. Yeah.
Speak Spanish and do it.
But we'll.
Oh, I think we're back. I didn't do the mute, but it looks like everybody got muted. But I'm going to hand it over to Julia, who's going to do a bit of the Sanctus.
All right. Hello, everybody, again. So let's open up to the beginning of the Sanctus. If you're in the same copy that's on the website, then it's page 24, or it's the 3rd movement. And we'll go ahead and just kind of review what we talked about last week, and then maybe learn a little bit more too. So first thing, before we get started, I wanted to point out, last week I told us that we should cut off on the 8th note rest, but as Ming confirmed for us, in French music, we tend to cut off on the tied 8th notes that we have, right on the beat instead of on the half beat. So looking on the end of the very first phrase that the sopranos have, for example, so I think measure 5, put the S of the Sanctus on that 2nd beat, right on the 8th note instead of the 8th rest. Just want to confirm that. That's the case for every time. That's for tenors and basses too. You have the same thing at measure 7. Put the S of the Sanctus on the 2nd beat, right on the 8th note, instead of the 8th rest. Every time. That happens quite a lot in this movement. So just to confirm that. Let's go ahead and start singing and sing through what we learned and went over last week. Right from the beginning section. Starting at measure 3, because I cannot accompany us. I'll just play our parts and sing along. Here you go. On Lu, so don't worry about words yet. 1, 2, 3. All right, that's about as far as we went last week. And just to confirm to altos, go ahead and sing along with everyone. You can either choose to sing with sopranos or with tenor basses, depending on what fits your range the best. But please do sing. Officially, you don't sing until the last 2 measures of the choral section of this movement, but please do sing along. So jumping back to this opening section one more time, just to remind us, so that the dynamic is pianissimo, but that doesn't mean disconnected or no breath, or, when we think of soft dynamics, often singers tend to retreat and use less breath because we think, oh, we have to be softer, we have to come off the breath, we have to disengage in order to make less sound. But the opposite is actually, it's actually the opposite. So you want to be using just as much of that support, that breath support that we talk about all the time, as much breath. And I think it's focusing more on the general affect or the emotion that you want. I think Brandy Sutton mentioned that to us over the summer. So whenever you're trying to sing dynamics or sing softly, focusing on still using that same engagement, but focusing on what affect you're trying to get across. So I think focusing on floating horizontal music, reverential feeling with all of that breath connection. So just because it says pianissimo, don't disengage. So just quickly to warm us back up, just repeat after me. Ha, 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 ha. Great, and make sure that we're getting diaphragm, like you're bouncing your diaphragm. Ho, 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 ho.
Oh, 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 oh.
Thank you. I love it. Yes. So using your diaphragm to connect, that's what we talk about support. That's what we talk about, your diaphragm and your belly muscles and everything that's kind of in your core support. You need to use and engage that as you sing. So one more time, let's start from measure 3, where we start pianissimo. But also be aware of the general, like sopranos, don't just be aware of only your line, but know that you're passing the music up to the tenors and basses too, right? Just because we're singing at home doesn't mean we don't have to be aware of everything else that would be happening ensemble-wise. So don't, be aware of passing your line off to the tenors. And same thing, tenors, hand your breath and give it to the sopranos when they start their next phrase too. So one more time, starting from measure 3, engagement. Here we go, right from, I'll give you 3 counts. 1, 2, and. We'll stop there for a moment, and we will go on, but just to kind of talk through this a little bit more too. So as we mentioned, as we experienced at the end of the very first movement, as all of the notes are kind of coming down to a close and we sing the, you don't have to turn back, I'll sing it for you, but the and then the E flat, and then one note. At the end of this, everything is kind of coming to a rest, right? Where you open that movement with Requiem Aeternam, putting to rest. The movement itself is coming down to a rest. But the Sanctus, on the opposite hand, is rising. So you start with just a couple notes. Sanctus, Sanctus. But then as you go on, you add another note. Dominus Deo. And then the tenors and basses. Dominus with the D natural. And then as we go on, we're still climbing up even more. So soprano is a measure before rehearsal B. Sanctus Dominus Deus. So as we continue to go on, we're still building, we're rising. And even halfway through this movement now that we've sung, we're kind of in this limbo phrase. Like we're coming, like we're always starting on the 5 of the key. So if we're in E flat major, we're always starting on B, ending on B flat, right? Or we're ending on the 7 or something. We're never really coming home, but we're rising and we're building, we're going somewhere, right? So even though it feels like it's only 1 or 2 notes, always feel like you're moving somewhere, you're building, you're growing as an ensemble through this section. And then turning the page, so this is page 30, or letter C, or measure 27. We start to have more full phrases now. So everyone's singing together from this section. Still on Lou. Sing along. Here we go, right at letter C. 1, 2, and. Tenors and basses. Sopranos again. And right here, this is finally the moment that we end and we get our E flat, our nice home note. And it's an arrival point. It's the first time that we've seen a forte. It's a very exciting moment, especially like leading up to this too. In the last 2 pages that we just sang, we finally get kind of more full phrases. It's not just 2-bar phrases, but we have 4-bar phrases that build together and connect between the sopranos and the tenors and basses. Let's all sing that again from letter C, that section one more time. Still on Lou. And notice how at letter C, we still start at sempre dolce, so it's still soft, still sweet. We're still building. We're still in the process of growing. And then once you get to letter D and a couple measures after that, that's when you start to see the crescendo and the build into the higher range and the longer phrase and right into letter F with the forte. So let's see if we can start at letter C and get that build through this section and that crescendo eventually. And still passing back and forth between our sopranos and our tenor bass sections. Sopranos, here's your B flat again. Here we go. 1 and ah. And right there too, right at letter F, the accompaniment also changes. So before where we had these very fluid, very ethereal accompaniment underneath us with the harp, and we have violas and organ and some lower strings as well. We have now chords that are happening on each beat, and we have horns and trumpets coming in. It's very exaltational at this moment. So it's very joyful and nice arrival point. So that letter F right there, that's a moment that you really need to build into and love and enjoy. The next section, which I think we'll look at the next section next week. I want to look at a couple more vocal related things at letter C area. So for example, let's look at sopranos. When you're singing at letter C and you sing up to that beautiful high E flat, it's really easy to get that E flat and then just kind of relax because you look at the rest of the phrase and notice that, oh, we just go back down to a B flat. That's easy. We already got the E flat out of the way. We've got this. But the hardest thing is to connect and sustain and keep that B flat in tune as you're running out of air supply, right, at the end of your phrase. So still stay connected, still stay engaged. That last note, or that last beat that you have in measure 30 is just as important as the E flat that you sang at like the top of that phrase. So still sing through it. Don't diminuendo. Sing through it and pass your phrase off to the tenors and basses. Tenors and basses, same thing, measures 33 and 34. Sing through, trying to refresh that note, keeping that in tune, and hand it off to the soprano. So you don't die off and leave them with empty space in order to start their phrase, right? This is like a a game of relay race. You're passing the lines off to each other as you build and work towards a goal. So let's start at letter C with that in mind, and we'll sing through one more time until that beautiful arrival point finally with that E flat. Here's our B flat. 1 and stay engaged, and 1, 2, and. Keep it high, nice, engaged. 1, 2, and. And start to crescendo, soprano. Start your crescendo little by little. And here's your arrival. Off. All right. And with that, I think I will turn it back to Ming for the rest of the rehearsal.
Great. We're going to go off into sectionals just for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes or so. We were going to do longer, but for those of you who know Paul, he, of course, is continuing us for the semester. He and Julia and I are going to be leading sectionals. And so we're just going to split off until the last 10 minutes of rehearsal. So from now until 10 minutes before the hour.
Coming right up. I have a few late assignments to make, including our leaders, so you'll be going into the right rooms in just a second. Julia is doing tenors.
I believe so.
Paul, welcome Paul. It's going to do basses. Let's see if the catch is off. Catch up. And Sally, you registered late, so I couldn't pre-assign you. Remind me, are you a soprano or alto? You're muted, but a thumbs up, you're one of those two parts? Perfect. Coming up. Hi Elaine, can I send you into, is it the soprano and altos, right?
I think we're all back now. Welcome back, and thank you again to Julia and Paul. So before I forget, next week we are going to be finishing up the first movement, and then looking at the second movement. But then we're going to be also looking at another piece that is very similar to not only the Four Requiem, but also the chant that inspires the second movement. And that is the Durflé Requiem. And so we're going to be actually singing through one of the movements of the Durflé Requiem, most likely the first movement, because it's really much based off of chant and talking about how chant and its lyricism sort of affected the Four Requiem and Requiems, especially Durflé Requiem, even though the Durflé Requiem was actually written in the middle of the 20th century. And as we know, the Four was written in the 19th century. So actually quite a bit farther apart. But because of the style, people oftentimes compare the two, like they're very similar characteristics, right? So next week we are going to be reading a little bit of the Durflé Requiem just for fun, just like a bash through, or if you want to just listen to it. It's going to be nice. We're going to be talking about chant. We're also going to be looking at the first movement and finishing that off, and then starting the second movement, the offertory. Okay. But for now, as always, we're going to sing through the first movement. Christian, are you doing this one or am I doing this one?
Your choice.
Why don't you do it? Because
okay.
And then we're going to sing through it. And then, of course, if you want to, feel free to stay afterwards for our normal hangout after the rehearsal.
And you said first movement and second movement, correct?
No, first movement for tonight, second movement for next week.
Okay, just first movement tonight to sing through. Are we going to sing through the third as well tonight, or just the first?
Just
Pardon
the
me. Okay, just the first. Coming up in just a second.
Christian, can you highlight me? We're going to switch who's sharing this right now because it looks like it's not in sync and we're having sound issues. So let me just figure out where we are for a second. Okay, 1 second. we go. Andante moderato. Cut off, cut off, cut off. Here we go. Look at that, right at 9 o'clock. Well, thank you all for helping and putting up with our changing sounds and all that kind of stuff. We're still working it all out. Zoom constantly is changing categories, and we're trying to navigate it and to remind ourselves to tap into certain sound characteristics. But again, next week we are going to be focusing on the first movement again, but also the second movement, reading through, I think, the first movement of the Duraflay Requiem and talking about chant and music and everything. So you're welcome to stay on, unmute yourselves and chat if you like, But thank you again the second week, and we will see you all next week regardless.
Thanks, Ming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ming. That was great.
Thank you, Ming.
Have a good night.
Bye.
It was great to see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Satisfied.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody's such a.
Thanks, Ming.
That's great.
You stay on.
Great session. Great session.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
So for those of you who have Yom Kippur, what time what time is sunset next week?
When it-
Usually around 7.
you better eat a lot first.
You can do what people in these sessions, which is have your glass of wine and your food off camera. Just, I have to tell you that
7, but then you have to eat heartily.
my girls have been quite expert at hiding things just barely off view on Zoom. Violet, who's a voracious reader, somehow clocked in 41 hours on her Kindle. And, we're like, weren't you in school for a lot of those hours? But yeah, Zoom is really great, but you can tell that they're trying to make so many adjustments, right? And help things along. There's so many more capacities, but